Hi, I'm following along with Paul McWhorter's Raspberry Pi lessons, and he has recently announced that he's going to be starting his Raspberry Pico lessons next week. So as everyone seems to be very excited about the Pico W, I thought I would raise the question of the security implications of using the Pico W. Because on the Pico, everything is normally stored in plain text, including your SSID and password, and any person who got their hands on your Pico could plug it into their PC or Mac or whatever, and would be able to find out your Wi-Fi details and would be able to get access to your Wi-Fi network. And this program will hopefully help you to reduce the risks of this happening. Now, when I work on my Pico, I use Thonny, and I always save my programs onto my PC rather than on my Pico for two reasons. I can move programs from one Pico to another more easily, and also there's less chance of my programs falling into the wrong hands were my Pico to get lost or stolen. Although I can't imagine that anyone would find a program to flash an LED on and off that interesting. Now, when you first get your Pico W, you think, oh right, first thing I want to do is to find out how to connect to my network. So you might write a program like this. No, not like that, which you just import network, and then you have this little function to connect. And you've got embedded in there your Wi-Fi name, your Wi-Fi network name, and your password. So anyone coming along and looking at that will think, I know exactly what your Wi-Fi and your password's called. So we'll run that, and it's just waiting for connection, and it will go on like that ad nauseum, because that isn't actually the name of my network. That's the name of one of Paul's networks, and that is probably not his password, because that would be too obvious. Right, not a good way of doing it. Trial number 2. You don't hard code your network name and your password into your program. You keep it in a file called Wi-Fi info1.txt. It would be better if you actually called this file something like my cat's name or whatever, because otherwise anyone coming along would think, haha, that's her Wi-Fi info. Incidentally, if you use the with open, it means that you don't have to close the file yourself. When you drop out to the bottom of the indented code, it will automatically close it, which is quite worth knowing. Now, if we look at what's in the info.txt, which is here, it just gives you the Wi-Fi name and the password, which is very, very useful for anyone wanting to get into your network. I could run that again, and it just split. When you open it, I get the array and I split it into two, and in the first element of the array is the Wi-Fi name, and in the second element it's the password. I won't bother to run that, but that's almost as bad as the first one. Trial 3. This is where you have a Pi program called Wi-Fi info.py, and in it you have SSID equals Manorhouse1, password equals Jackson, and you import that into your program, and we'll try running it, and again it's just waiting for connection, won't do anything. But that is equally as bad, because you've got the the import statement going to that file, and it actually tells what SSID. I mean, you could say cat equals Manor House 1, dog equals Jackson, but that wouldn't hide much for anyone. Right. Fourth trial looks incredibly similar to number 2. Number 2, you're reading in your information from a file and you're splitting it into an array. That's exactly what happens. You're reading it in from a file and you're splitting it into an array. And it looks very, very similar. But if you, well, we'll try running it first of all. Hello, there's a lot of information in my array, we think. So get out of that. And if we look at the file we're reading, it's got a lot of Wi-Fi names and a lot of fake passwords. And then if we go down to that line, the Jackson's there, we think, this is strange. So we go back to the code and think, right, I'm doing everything the same, but it's different. I think this is strange. And then you think, what are those up there? If you look at line 18, WLAN connect array, that looks like 0 and 1, but it isn't. It is actually capital O and L. And L is 7, so if you look back here, 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah. So that's trying to trick them into thinking that the array items you're looking at are 0 and 1, but not many people would fall for that. Right. My final attempt at doing this is I'm encoding the network name and password, and this program is just to encode it, and it prompts the user, i.e. me, for the SSID, and then it encodes it, and then it prompts for the password and encodes it, and it doesn't store them, which means that you don't have the problem with any data files that people can get the look on, get into. So if we look at the encode thing, you take the network name, and I've deliberately used I and J to confuse people rather than saying character in password, character in whatever, and I encode it with the encode key, which means that if you take the first character of each string, like that's the first character of Manor House 1, and you take the odd of it, which is a decimal, an integer value, and then you add the odd of the first character of the encode key, and you carry on. Now the encode key is quite interesting. I wanted to make it something that was unique, and I thought if I use the MAC address of the Raspberry Pico, then it will only work with my Raspberry Pico, and if anyone stole it, I could just on my router say don't allow this device to be on my network, and then they wouldn't be able to get into the network. And if they tried running this program on if they tried using the decode program on another Raspberry Pico, it wouldn't work because the encode key would be different. Anyway, we'll try running it. Enter SSID. Manor House 1. enter password, Jackson. Right, it has encoded them both, and if you look at that, that is just an array of integers, and it's the first one is the same length as the SSID, and the second one is the same length as the password. Now, it hasn't saved these values to the to any text files or anything, so it's okay. So no one can find them. So if you copy them like that, and then you can use them for your next program. Now, the encode program you only ever use on the PC. You're running it on the Pico, but you don't save it onto the Pico at all. So the next program, which I've got here, it is to decode, and the decode key again is your MAC address. So you take the two lines that were produced by the previous program and you put them in there, and it's exactly the same. You just, if you go up here, you just take off each character of your decode key, and you should get left with the original thing. So we will try running that, and it can't connect. Need to get into the right thing. Right, can't connect. But if you look there, that 28CDC107DB85 is the MAC address of my Pico, and by using that key, it's managed to get back the Wi-Fi name and the address. Now you're thinking, well, this still isn't actually secure because people can look at that program. But we'll come on to that later. Now, just to prove that it does work, I have got my decode program that I've actually used with my real Wi-Fi name and password, and you can tell it starts on line number 20, because up here, blank lines, and right at the top I have got the encoded SSID and password for my network. So this is just to prove this it will work. We'll try running it, waiting for connection. Hurrah! It connected. So that proves that this works. Now the only problem now is to think of a way of hiding the only program on your Pico, this one, hiding the information. And there's a thing called MPY cross. Now what MPY cross is, it compiles your MicroPython program, and it puts it into a binary format that you would have to be a real whiz kid to be able to reverse engineer that and get it to be in a readable format. So what I will do first is I will go into File Explorer, and I will go to where my Pico W programs are, and the one that I was doing was decode skeleton. So I will copy that, and then I will go into my file that has MPY cross in, and I will paste it in there. Right, you've only got the 3 files there. Now if you go into PowerShell, and that's in my MPY cross file, so if I go directory, there we have it. There's the exe file, there's the skeleton file, and there's the whatever it is. So we need to run mpy cross using my decode skeleton, and then if we do a directory again, there it is. You've got a decode skeleton.mpy. So we're getting there. Now the problem is Thonny doesn't support at the moment, unless there's a newer version out, it doesn't support .mpy files. So you have to think, I need to have a better way of doing this. So I have to close Thonny and go into Visual Studio Code and get rid of what I had before. Right, we will go into File, open File, and that's the file that I've just created by using mpy cross. So we open that one up, and it says the file is not displayed in the editor because it's either binary or uses an unsupported text encoding. Open anyway. Right, so if we open it anyway using the text editor, it looks like total nonsense. I mean, there are bits of text in there. Is connected, ifconfig, waiting for connection. Really, that wouldn't be any good to anybody at all. And so now what you need to do is to get it onto your Pico. So if you go, I'm using Pico W Go here, and if you go upload current file only, it says upload done. Everything's up there. I haven't set up my Visual Studio Code with MicroPython properly, so I can't actually show what's on there. But if we get out of there and we go back into Thonny, this might not work. Whoops, I did that twice. Right, there. If we go back into Thonny and no, that's very odd. It ought to, maybe if I do refresh, it might be there. Well, no, this hasn't exactly worked. It ought to be on my Raspberry Pico, but it isn't. Anyway, there you have it. Because I don't actually need to do all of this myself, because security implications aren't that important to me. Living in France, unfortunately, the expertise of IT people isn't great, apart from strange, very, very rare people who actually know how to use things. I mean, an example is online banking. If I use my UK bank account for online banking and I leave it, it will log me out. If I haven't pressed a key for a while, it will log me out and it will display a screen saying you've been logged out. If I do it for my French bank account, it will log me out, but it will leave all my details sitting on the screen for everyone to come and have a look at. And the same thing is with my router, the one that is being supplied by my ISP, which is Orange, which is the main ISP in France. If you go up to it and you press a button twice, it will say your Wi-Fi password is something or other. And I think, well, thanks. So I don't need to do this, but I just thought it might be helpful to you. So there we have it. Let me know what you think if you actually managed to get to the end of this video.